Fires across South Central have slowed traffic and destroyed homes. We're live in Willow this morning where smoke and burned trees are a familiar scene.
From the peninsula to the Mat-Su, fires rage across South Central due to the high winds and dry conditions. An overview of the bigger fires burning right now: the McKinley Fire burning on both sides of the Parks Highway between miles 84 and 91. It's estimated at 3,000 acres with zero containment. You also have the Deshka Landing Fire that's burning at 2,000 acres with zero containment. Outside of the valley, the Swan Lake Fire near Cooper Landing. Now, our fire coverage starts in Willow this morning, and that is where we find Liz Rains. Liz, you're standing in an area that was burned once before, 4 years ago?
That's right, John. This area was burned by the Sockeye Fire in 2015. We're right around mile 72 of the Parks Highway, just about a mile north of Willow Fishhook Road. And you can still see lots of charred spruce trees like this one here. And it's a reminder of just how hot and fast this type of wood can burn in these dry conditions. Once again, firefighters say it's black spruce like this one here that are fueling the McKinley Fire now. We want to show you some video from just up the road, about 16 miles north of where we're standing now at mile 88 of the Parks Highway. This is near Sheep Creek Lodge. Now, according to the Division of Forestry, about 50 structures have been lost, but the exact number will not be confirmed until after an assessment later today. Also, the Alaska Interagency Incident Management Team is taking over from the initial attack team. So if you have been evacuated, you're asked to please call in so that people are accounted for. Now, firefighters are still trying to count the number of homes that may have been lost and burned due to the McKinley Fire. Some people evacuated their homes this weekend, but they didn't find out what happened to them until late Sunday night. As KTVA 11's Lauren Maxwell reports, some people, even in the same neighborhood, had very different outcomes. Firefighters say could easily be a day or two before people are allowed back in their neighborhoods. As of right now, we haven't heard of any injuries, but there are some people who are still unaccounted for. So firefighters are still checking to make sure that everyone is safe. If you have any questions about the McKinley and Deshka Landing fires or about any buildings, you're asked to call the Mat-Su Area Forestry Hotline. We do have that number for you there on your screen. Now, we also have some good news about the Deshka Landing fire. That's burning just about 4 miles to our west here in Willow. The Alaska Division of Forestry says calmer weather and air support are helping firefighters. So far, the fire has burned around 2,000 acres, but crews were able to build containment lines on the eastern side closest to cabins. The fire started Sunday afternoon. It's about 5 miles west of the Parks Highway near mile 68. Now, Pioneer Peak hotshot crews and Tanana Chiefs attack crews are working the fire. More crews from the lower 48 are expected to join them tonight. And because of that fire, the railroad has canceled all passenger trains from Anchorage to Denali Park. In a release, the railroad says the fire jumped the tracks on Saturday night. It is continuing to burn on both sides of the tracks. Burned trees have also fallen onto those tracks. Remaining passengers will be moved by bus, highway traffic allowing. And because of the ongoing fire danger, the Matanuska-Susitna Borough School District is closing 5 schools today. Willow Elementary, Talkeetna Elementary, Trapper Creek, Sioux Valley High School, Buryoizova schools will all be closed Tuesday, August 20th. That's today. And depending on the fire activity, the borough may close schools again tomorrow, but we're told that that decision will be made later today. Now, on top of the fires that are burning here in the valley, down on the Kenai Peninsula, high winds have pushed the Swan Lake Fire across the Sterling Highway. We want to show you exactly where it's burning in the Chugach National Forest right now and the Kenai National Wildlife Refuge. It's burned south of Ski Lake Road at the Lower Ski Lake Campground. It's also burning in the area east of the Kenai River. Now, the Sterling Highway is not closed, but cars have been stopped because of fire activity near the road. The Swan Lake Fire has reached about 138,000 acres. The fire was contained until the high winds picked up this weekend, causing the fire to jump the highway twice, eventually closing it. Some drivers were stuck and some people slept in their cars.
The Parks Highway is open, but vehicles are being led by pilot cars between milepost 71 and 99. Now, Daybreak's Liz Rains is in that area, and we go to her now for kind of what it looks like. Liz, good morning.
Well, John, it's good morning, and it's quite smoky out here right now. We're at mile 72 of the Parks Highway, and you can make out here in the distance the headlights of cars about a mile south of us that are waiting to go through this stretch. It's down to just one lane right through this stretch of road, and we're told that it could take anywhere from 1 hour to 3 hours to get through. So if you must travel through the fire zone, KTV 11's Dave Laval has some recommendations on what to bring. Now, the Division of Forestry is reminding everyone that this part of the highway could close down completely at any time. We're told that just up the road, the visibility is near zero, and there are flames on both sides of the highway.
All right, Liz, and besides emergency vehicles, we're being told a lot of semi-trucks on the road right now.
Yes, that's right. We've seen a lot of them this morning, even more now that the railroad is closed down, because that means that all of the supplies, including groceries, are having to be trucked into Fairbanks and surrounding communities.
All right, Liz, thank you very much. Liz Raines live in Willow this morning. We'll check back in with her in just a little bit.
Alaskans are known for their generous spirit, even in the face of danger. We're live in Willow with how one neighbor helped a musher save her dogs from the McKinley wildfire.
Fires rage across South Central due to high winds and dry conditions. Let's check out an overview of the bigger fires burning right now. The McKinley Fire burning on both sides of the Parks Highway between miles 84 and 91. It's estimated at 3,000 acres with zero containment. There's also the Deshka Landing Fire burning at 2,000 acres with zero containment. Now, outside of the valley, the Swan Lake Fire is happening right now near Cooper Landing as well. And once again, we check in with into Willow this morning, where we find Liz Raines broadcasting live. And Liz, from where you're standing, you can actually see the two fires out in the valley there?
That's right, John, and it's so smoky out here right now. It's hard to tell which fire, what smoke is coming from. Right over here to my right is where the Deshka Landing Fire is burning, about 4 miles to the west over here. And then if we flip it around this way, that up the road there is where the McKinley Fire is burning. We're at mile 72 of the Parks Highway right now, and this area was actually burned by the Sockeye Fire in 2015. And just up the road where the McKinley Fire is burning, it's a similar scene. We want to show you video from about 16 miles north of where we are, around mile 88 of the Parks Highway. This is near the Sheep Creek Lodge. Now, according to the Division of Forestry, about 50 structures have been lost, but the exact numbers will not be confirmed until after an assessment later today. Also, the Alaska Interagency Incident Management Team is taking over from the initial attack team. So if you have evacuated, you're asked to call in so that you can be accounted for. And many of those people that had to evacuate, they had just minutes to decide what to take with them. Many Alaskans are waiting this fire out at a Red Cross shelter that was set up in Wasilla. KTV 11's Daniela Rivera was there, and she spoke with one woman about how she made that difficult choice about what to take. Deshka Landing Fire burning here in Willow. It's about 4 miles off to our west over here. Now, according to the Alaska Division of Forestry, calmer weather and air support have helped firefighters battling that blaze. They say the fire has burned around 2,000 acres, but crews were able to build containment lines on the eastern side closest to cabins. The fire started Saturday afternoon, is now about 5 miles west of the Parks Highway near mile 68. Pioneer Peak hotshot crews and Tanana Chiefs attack crews are working the fire, and more crews from the lower 48 are expected to join them tonight. Because of the ongoing fire danger, the Matanuska-Susitna Borough is closing 5 schools today. We want to let you know about those closures, starting with Willow Elementary, Talkeetna Elementary, Trapper Creek, Sioux Valley High School, and Berezova schools are all going to be closed today, August 20th. And depending on the fire activity, the borough says it may close schools again tomorrow, but that decision is going to be made a little bit later today. Now, on top of these fires that are burning here in the valley, down on the Kenai Peninsula, the high winds have pushed Swan Lake Fire across the Sterling Highway. We want to show you exactly where it's burning in the Chugach National Forest and the Kenai National Forest Wildlife Refuge this morning. It's burned south of Ski Lac Lake and at the lower Ski Lac campground. It's also burning in the area east of the Kenai River. This morning on Daybreak, firefighters are holding the line on the McKinley Fire here in Willow. We've got a live update on their work overnight.
The same weather pattern caused that fire that caused this fire.
This morning, we look at how the McKinley Fire compares to the Sockeye Fire 4 years ago and what happens if old fire scars burn again. Over 200 wildfires burning in the state right now. 3 of the major ones firefighters are battling. Well, down on the Kenai Peninsula, the Swan Lake Fire, and of course the Deshka and the McKinley fires continue to rage near the Parks Highway. And for a look from behind the fire line, we join Liz Raines, who is once again live in Willow this morning. Liz, good morning.
Good morning, John. We're at mile 73 of the Parks Highway. Much less smoky today than it was just 24 hours ago. The winds are quite calm. For the very latest on fire progress, we've got Cale Casey with us. He is the lead information officer of the Alaska Interagency Incident Management Team. Mr. Casey, good morning.
Good morning, Liz.
So fire crews have been working in a sort of a holding pattern, trying to keep the fire from moving further south than mile 84 of the Parks Highway, about 10 miles north of where we are now. How did it go overnight?
So overnight we had the engines patrolling to make sure all the structures that are still intact stay upright. That's the goal of the night shift, while the day troops are moving in. So we had 2 more hotshot crews come in yesterday from the lower 48. We have additional 7 more crews en route to join our already hardworking Alaskans and some outsiders. So don't forget, the night shift also includes the Alaska State Patrol, National Guard, and everybody who supports all these road closures, which, though they are inconvenient, are really critical to keep the firefighters safe and to keep traffic moving smoothly and safely through the fire zone.
And at this point, the fire is still considered 0% contained, but there is a line, a perimeter that's being held in that holding pattern. What's the difference there?
So we go direct when we can, when it's not blowing wind and blowing fireballs at us, which it was on Sunday. We can go direct. So we have dozers and crews going direct. That doesn't mean it's mopped up and contained, but it means that we're on the offensive and we're trying to prevent that, especially that southern portion, from moving any further south.
Calm winds are in the forecast for today, possibly tomorrow. So at this point, is it possible to put a timeline on when you might have containment?
Here's the problem: is it's too dry. There's no rain in the forecast. The ground is extremely dry, and in Alaska the ground goes about 12 to 14 inches in places, and that's what's going to give us a long, hard battle to mop up.
Some sad news yesterday. We heard there's actually 80 buildings that have been lost at this point. How many more could be at risk?
So that's an approximation. Yesterday the numbers got a little bit confusing. We're waiting for Brad Pickett and the assessment team to deliver the final numbers in about 2 days. So I don't want anybody thinking that we had a whole bunch of new structures that are suddenly accounted for. They're not. We're still in that haze of trying to figure out how many outbuildings, how many sheds versus primary homes. So let's just all sit tight for a couple days for Brad to give his report.
All right, good information. This morning on Daybreak, the McKinley Fire in Willow is now about 10% contained. As more fire crews continue coming in, we've got a behind-the-scenes look at their base camp.
From Willow to the Kenai Peninsula, more than 500 people are working on many fires. We have several stories this morning on how those fires are impacting families, homes, and pets. Plus, how to create a space around your house to protect it from fire. And once again, with us from Willow this morning, Liz Raines. Now, Liz, you've been covering the fires out there all week.
That's right, John, and we're at fire camp here in Willow this morning. This is where a lot of the day crews were getting some rest. They're just starting to wake up over here. Many of them were just sleeping in sleeping bags on the concrete last night. We are expecting some of the overnight crews to be coming in to rest up themselves. This is also where all of their equipment is staged. And I want to show you, because you can see just from the markings on these vehicles how diverse this group is. These are teams from all across Alaska. This particular engine, for example, comes from Daybreak. We've got one from Nenana over here, another from Anderson. So there are teams coming not only from all across Alaska, but they're also going to be coming in from around the country. Right now, there's about 270 people working the McKinley Fire alone. More crews expecting to arrive from around the country even today and to continue arriving into the weekend. Now, right now, fire officials say the McKinley Fire is about 10% contained, and new mapping shows that it has burned around 3,700 acres. That's less than was originally estimated. It's burning off of the Parks Highway right now between Willow and the Talkeetna Cutoff. About 80 buildings have been burned. That's including many homes. And heavier winds are expected this weekend. So we're told that crews are beefing up efforts on the southern end of the fire. They've worked on a dozer line off mile 84 of the Parks Highway, and Crews are trying to protect buildings off Hidden Hills and Caswell Lakes Road. Now, they were not able to save the food and tackle stop at Camp Caswell off the Parks Highway. It's nearly leveled. Our camera crew was allowed behind the fire scenes, and we took video of where it once stood at mile 87.5 off of the Parks Highway. Now, compare those images to what it used to look like. These are pictures taken in September 8 years ago. This is inside the fire zone, and we want to remind everybody you're not allowed to stop in that area. We could only be escorted by a pilot car through that zone. Some people have asked about the Sheep Creek Lodge off of the Parks. Our crew drove by it yesterday. It is still standing. Yesterday, the Division of Natural Resources reminded everybody to be very careful about dry grass right now.
Pay particular attention to ATVs. Exhaust pipes and engine manifolds get really hot, and it's easy to just pull up in an area and just, you're out there loving what you're doing and you just don't realize you're parked in dry grass, and we just have an inordinate amount of dry fuel laying around out there.
The McKinley Fire started on Saturday near milepost 91 of the Parks Highway. It was originally reported to have been sparked by a downed power line, but that is now under investigation. And there is an emergency burn closure in place right now we want to let everybody know about. That's for the entire Mat-Su Valley, also the Kenai Peninsula on state, private, borough, and municipal lands. That means no open burning, including campfires in fire pits or burn rings. However, gas and pellet grills are still allowed. And John, coming up a little bit later in the show, we're going to talk about how you can protect your own home in the event of a wildfire. We're also going to talk to a first responder who was one who responded to the Sockeye fire 5 years ago, and why he says he's decided now to make this community and one of those burned neighborhoods his home.
Wow, very important information. Thank you very much, Liz. Liz Raines live in Willow, and Liz will check back in with you here in just a little bit. As many as 80 buildings may have been burned from the McKinley Fire, and as crews work to protect even more homes, fire officials want to remind everyone that there are things you can do to make your house less attractive to flames. And of course, Liz Raines joining us still from Willow this morning to break that down for us.
Well, John, we've seen examples in the same neighborhood where one home is devoured by fire while the house next door goes untouched. So why does that happen? Well, firefighters say it's what's around those homes that can make the difference.
Like a picky eater, a wildfire will go for its favorite foods first.
So the fire is going to look for the next pocket where it can explode.
That's exactly what happened during the Sockeye fire in 2015.
The Sockeye fire blew over this entire area, took every black spruce with it.
Cale Casey was a first responder at the time. Now he's decided to make this Willow neighborhood his home, and he set up his own business here.
In the winter, it's still a little depressing around here. However, we're extremely safe in this fire scar because all the black spruce have already torched out. So it's the irony, it's the trade-off.
Black spruce are a fire's delicacy.
It's like gasoline.
Over the last several years, Casey has been paying close attention to them, creating what's known as a defensible space around his shop.
When black spruce come up, I'm going to cut them down. I'm going to encourage aspens to grow. I'm going to knock this stuff down.
Because the past is proof that fires are predictable.
The fire couldn't establish itself in those aspens. Those are the homes that survived.
So what to do if you have black spruce near you?
You should cut all the black spruce around your house if you want to keep your house in Alaska.
It may be best to take them off the menu.
Now, whether you live in a heavily wooded area or in the middle of the city, here are a few things you can do right now to make your home safer from a fire. First, you want to clear any debris that you might have in your gutters. Those could catch embers. You also want to get rid of anything that's stored underneath your deck or your porch and remove anything flammable like firewood away from the exterior walls of your home. Now, there are many more resources available. We'll post them for you on our website. That's, of course, KTVA.com.
Again, great information this morning, Liz. And earlier we heard the DNR commissioner talk about the dry grass, giving a warning about that. It's crazy to think that it doesn't even take a spark to start a fire. How big an issue is this dry grass?
Well, one thing that people might not be thinking about is the dry grass on the edge of their property. Casey says it's particularly important, especially if you live near a road, to keep that packed down. Even if it's a state easement, you don't want to risk an accident that might happen there on the road and then a spark from that burning up the grass and eventually getting to your home.
All right, Liz, thank you very much. We'll check back in with you here in the next half hour of Daybreak. Liz Raines live in Willow this morning.
This half hour on Daybreak, nearly 300 people are now working the McKinley Fire in Willow. We've got a behind-the-scenes look at the camp that's housing fire crews when they're not on the line.
And from Willow to the Kenai Peninsula, more than 500 people are working on several fires, more than half of them, specifically on the McKinley Fire. And Liz Raines is at the camp that's housing them this morning. Good morning, Liz. What's happening right now?
Well, good morning, John. Right now, all the dayside crews are just waking up. Many of them slept in the tents like the ones that you see here behind me. Some of them just slept in sleeping bags on the ground. They're just getting up, getting ready to start the day here. We are expecting that the overnight crews are going to start trickling in as well. And when they do, they're going to be having their morning meeting right over here. They're going to be going through a briefing. You can see some of them already getting breakfast there, some coffee, getting ready to head out onto the line. And so they're going to be having a briefing where they're going to be strategizing their plan for today. They're going to be going over the latest fire maps, and they're also going to be laying out their objectives. And we're told that's particularly important when you have so many different agencies working a fire like this one, to outline your objectives and literally all be on the same page. Now, as of right now, fire officials say that the McKinley Fire is now about 10% contained, and new mapping shows that it burned around 3,700 acres, which is less than was originally estimated. It's burning off of the park's highway between Willow and the Talkeetna cutoff right now. About 80 buildings have been burned, many of them homes. The Division of Forestry says over 270 people are fighting the McKinley Fire, and with heavier winds expected this weekend, crews are beefing up efforts on the southern end of the fire. They've worked on a dozer line off of mile 84 of the park's highway, and crews are trying to protect buildings off of Hidden Hills and Caswell Lakes right now. Also, officials still trying to keep people out of the McKinley Fire zone. They aren't letting people return to their homes just yet. KTV 11's Lauren Maxwell did speak to one of the couples who lost their homes, and they say they're not sure they're ready to return just yet. Well, hoping that they can rebuild. And we do have a link to that GoFundMe account on our website. Of course, that's ktva.com. John.
Wow, such a powerful story. Liz, do we have any idea when officials will let people back into their homes?
Well, there's a lot of factors at play right now, including the weather this weekend, but one of the information officers here working this incident did tell me that their hope is that they can get people back into their neighborhoods by mid next week, sometime around then.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Liz Raines live in Willow this morning. Thank you, Liz.
This morning on Daybreak, we're now approaching 1 week of the McKinley Fire. With dry weather, crews are ramping up work into the weekend. We've got a live look at the front lines.
In the subject of hoping for the best, it's going to be a difficult day for many people who live in the path of the McKinley Fire, as today is the day when they will learn if their homes were destroyed. And Daybreak's Liz Raines joins us once again from Willow. Liz, we know at least 80 structures have burned.
That's right, John, and it's unknown at this point how many of those are homes, but the officials are asking anybody who lives in the fire zone to go to the Upper Susitna Shelter or the Menard Center today at 10 o'clock. Simultaneously, in both of those locations, they're going to be announcing whose home survived and whose home did not survive the fire. They're also going to be showing pictures of those buildings. Now, as for the fire itself, still about 10% contained at about 3,700 acres. Firefighters say one of the big challenges they're facing on the McKinley Fire right now is that tree roots are burning, and then those trees are falling.
And we've got homes in there, so while we're trying to keep that fire small, we're also running around putting out new fires next to homes as those trees fall down. So that's the primary reason why we still have that evacuation order in place.
Incident Commander Norm McDonald says there are about 300 people fighting the fire, with at least another 100 people on their way. While no one is saying when the fire will be controlled, McDonald did say you can't expect to see firefighters here until it snows. And we're out here at around milepost 84 of the park's highway, John, just to give you an idea. You can kind of see Susitna Shores. The road is kind of smoked out there behind me. We're right on the southern perimeter of the McKinley Fire here, and this is a critical area for firefighters. They've really ramped up their efforts right at this point because they want to keep the fire from slipping any further south if the winds were to pick back up. They don't want it to head down the road. So for the latest on their progress overnight, I want to turn to Renee Saba. She is a Public Information Officer with the Alaska Incident Interagency Command Center. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
So here we are at milepost 84. How far exactly are we from like the flames of the fire, would you say?
There's active flames all around the corridor of the fire. I wouldn't say big flame links, but there's pockets of fuel that are still available and burning out. And then there's lots of dead and down trees, like you mentioned, that also, if the wind picks up a little bit or it catches the right amount of it, it'll definitely flare up. And
yeah, we've heard firefighters describing it as playing whack-a-mole. What is causing that?
Yeah, basically the duff layer in Alaska is very deep, and it's also very dry, and the fuels are very dry. They were dry before they were on fire, and then the fire actually preheated everything and made things even more dry. So basically there's just a lot of potential for
for any kind of a flare-up, and so I'm wondering, for people who live down the road, should they be concerned at all if wind were to pick up this weekend, for example, that this fire could make another 5-mile run?
Yeah, our meteorologist has let us know that we need to be prepared for some potential winds this evening. We are happy that the RH, the humidity is going to be up and the temperatures are going to be cooler, so while that helps us, the wind is not going to help us if that happens. It's not going to be anything like it was last Saturday. It's going to be quite a bit less than that, but it's definitely something that we're ramping up for. We're going to have additional crews stationed at each end of the fire, and overhead and air resources. Today we're going to strengthen the line with retardant.
And what about a potential for new startups, new fires to start?
We're definitely concerned about that, and the folks that will be staged at each end of the fire will be able to respond to those, as well as any flare-ups that might get out of our line that we're working on.
They're very concerned about the dry weather and potential, we say potential, for some wind tonight. Daybreak's Liz Raines joins us live from the fire this morning. Liz, you want to just describe the scene out there for us, please?
Yeah, really smoky here on the southern perimeter of the fire line. We're right about mile 84, and you can kind of make out the sign for the Susitna Shores Road right behind me. That's the neighborhood that we're in here. Quite cold this morning. This is the area that Palmer Peak hotshots have really been focusing on, because it is that critical area that there's concern if there were wind to pick up, that the fire could move south farther down the highway. So this has been a primary focus, and those Pioneer Peak hotshots have been working long hours to try to make sure that spread doesn't happen.
As soon as the sun rises, so do the crews working to control the McKinley Fire.
We're on day, I believe, 17, and we came from some other fires.
After just a few hours rest,
Thank you.
some breakfast,
I like oatmeal, yeah.
it's back to work on a fire line that feels far too familiar for Palmer's Pioneer Peak hotshots.
It was pretty devastating, I would say. We were on sockeye as well, so it reminded me a lot of sockeye, but worse, it seemed like.
Chris Baumgartner is superintendent of the 22-member crew,
Start plugging people in.
for many of whom the firefight is personal.
We have some folks that live up here, so, and some of our folks, family members, directly affected by what's going on here.
Okay, questions?
At a morning briefing, the Pioneer Peaks get a fresh look at what they're working with.
Build a team, support each other, communicate, kick its ass. All right, let's go to work.
And are assigned a critical area.
Our main priority is to hold this southern chunk and this whole southern flank. And today we'd like to get around, get around this piece here.
They only have a small window before stronger winds move in, so they've got to lay the groundwork now.
We have our chainsaws out in front, and then, cutting a swath through the brush and the trees.
Keep progress made in place.
Try to cool the fire's edge before the crew gets in there.
The hotshots hit the road
Milepost 84.
in high gear.
We have quite a bit of open line out here, but again, we're making progress each and every day, little victories every day.
They're hoping for a big little victory today.
And there are still several homes in the fire zone out here that firefighters are working to try to protect. Backup is on its way. We're told that crews from Oregon and other parts of the country are still making their way here to Alaska to help.
All right, Liz, I know these guys have, the hotshot crews have to be working long hours. What does the work cycle look like for the firefighters?
Really long hours, John. They're working 16-hour days, up to 21 days in a row. Then they'll take 2 days off. And when this fire first started, we're told that the crews that were working here were working anywhere between 28 and 30 hours just to try to get it under control. They did have to get special permission for that, by the way.